Who is this? You know who it is.
Gentlemen, welcome.
My powers have doubled since the last time I met Count.
Do the work, Dan.
Work ethic eliminates fear.
I have no fear of fainting in the gym.
Control your emotions. Discipline your mind.
Do you like books?
Yeah.
Have you actually read the book? I found it compelling.
I've been getting asked a lot what books I enjoyed and influenced me the most in prison.
He's relentless, or he won't quit.
Or as I like to put it, ideas having sex.
Die ineinander einen Zusammenhalt gefunden hat.
We found in one another a bond.
Wie sich nur im Kampf entwickeln kann.
It exists only in combat.
I'm going to lay this brick as perfectly as a brick can be laid.
Never give up. It's just, that's the given. You always fight. Giving up's never an equation.
He has been described as a cross between Bruce Lee and Wayne Dyer. Nic Gregoriades is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu master holding a third-degree black belt under the legendary Roger Gracie. Nic was the first ever to receive a black belt from Roger Gracie, and for those that don't know, Roger Gracie is akin to the LeBron James or Michael Jordan of BJJ, as he is widely regarded as the greatest competitor of all time. For most, achieving a black belt takes at least a decade, but often longer. Nic achieved this feat in a ridiculous 4 years under Roger. The number of men who have achieved this feat faster than Nic can be counted on two hands. In addition to being a master in this martial art, Nic is also a published author of Jiu-Jitsu, the Black Belt Blueprint, an intelligent approach to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which currently holds a 4.5-star rating on Amazon, and his newest book, Aligned, which features the most vital and effective strategies men require for achieving lives of exceptional quality. He's also one of the co-founders of the London Real podcast and now runs the Liberation Mentor podcast, which speaks on health, business, relationships, and philosophy. He's also an entrepreneur and transformational coach for men. Nic, I just want to extend my gratitude for sharing this time with me today and welcome you to the show as well.
Yeah, thanks, brother. It's good to be here. I appreciate you having me on the show.
Definitely. And let's just get right into it. Since we have an hour, how old were you when you moved to London, and what allowed you to achieve a black belt in 4 years under Roger Gracie?
I think I was 23 and a half years old when I moved to London. And what allowed me to achieve that was I'd done martial arts before, so I had definitely had an affinity for it. I wasn't starting from a complete novice position. Did judo when I was a little kid as well. I started judo at the age of 6.5 years old. So I had a background in martial arts, and I was just in the right place at the right time. I was young, strong, hungry, intelligent, hardworking, dedicated, and all those things came together that allowed me, fortunately, to achieve the black belt pretty quickly.
And you were training about 6 days a week, would you say? Or how often would you say a week would you train?
Yeah, I'd be on the mat 6 days a week because I was mainly supporting myself by teaching private lessons after the first couple of years. So, sometimes I'd be on the mat 7 days a week, but generally it was 6, no less than 5.
Okay. And if you if you had to choose another martial art to become a master, and like if you could go back and say BJJ didn't exist or you weren't allowed to, what martial art would you choose and why?
That's a fantastic question. There would be 3 I'd have to choose between: boxing, Muay Thai, or wrestling, and maybe judo would fall in there as well. In the world of martial arts, the truth is that no one really wants to hear is that most martial arts are just absolute garbage. They don't work. They're just like weird fancy systems that people sucked out of their thumbs. And then there's a select group of martial arts which are known as the functional martial arts, which actually, they're called functional because they actually work. They've been tested in combat, and they've been tested using sparring and competition. So for example, boxing, a boxer knows how to punch people, and he also knows how to take a shot. Whereas many weird forms of kung fu and strange karate forms where they don't do any sparring. They just do these weird forms and they punch the air and kick the air. And then those forms are largely dysfunctional. There are some that start to move towards realism and they have actual sparring and competition, and they start to resemble functional martial arts a little bit more. But generally they're just, I mean, I don't want to say a waste of time, because there are certain things that you learn from them, such as discipline and balance and coordination, and there are certain positive elements. But as fighting systems, they are largely dysfunctional. So for me, I'd stick with one of the functional ones. And as I mentioned, that's boxing, wrestling, judo, Muay Thai, or Jiu-Jitsu / submission grappling. Okay. Excellent. And you mentioned in one of your interviews that, well, it made me think, and I'll get to the quote, it made me think of this movie called Waking Life, which is just this animated movie. It's basically about a one long lucid dream that's going on, and it speaks on philosophy and all these different things. And there's one scene in it where I think it's a woman, and she's talking about, she used to think that there was like a finish line that you would get to, and that made me what you said in this one interview made me think of that. And you said that you realized one day that as a man you were always paying your dues. Could you kind of extrapolate on that a bit? Yeah, that's a very good question, Ad. So we all, regardless of who we are and what we know, what we think we know, we don't see the world accurately. Some things we get right and some things we get wrong. And hopefully if you're an open-minded person and you're dedicated to growth, the percentage of things you get wrong starts to shrink as you get older, and the percentage of things you get right starts to expand. And one of the things that I definitely got wrong when I was younger is that, I believed that there were certain elements of being a man or elements of life that had a definite final finish line. So for example, one of them was being in shape, right? I thought, okay, you work out and you follow the diet and you lift the weights and you do the training, you get in shape, and then you're there, right? It's cool, you're in shape now. It's done. You can check that off. I'm done. But I realized pretty late in life that it doesn't work that way. You're constantly paying your dues. As I said, you're constantly having it's a continual never-ending process, and when you stop paying attention to those kinds of things, that's actually when you start to deteriorate and you literally start to die. So for me in life, the paying my dues I think what I really mean is that it's that you're constantly striving for growth, and it's not just enough to maintain. You have to keep growing and keep pushing forwards, right?
Mm-hmm. And do you think that's different for men versus women?
Not really. I think men generally operate in worlds in which it's more readily apparent, like high pressure executive jobs are occupied more by men, and in the military and martial arts and all those things, these things are generally occupied more by men. But that's changing. Women are starting to form a larger part of those or more of those roles. So I don't think it's different per se. I just think that traditionally men have been doing things where that is brought to the forefront more, if that makes sense. Yeah, definitely. And you are, you remind me of just the energy I kind of get from listening to you, Nic. And this is an oversimplification, but I see people who have a lot of cat energy or a lot of dog energy, and I think we have a little bit of both. But you seem like you have have a majority cat energy, and you're very comfortable being alone, and that kind of alpha energy is what I pick up from you. And you speak about working long hours alone, and this is something that I've dealt with before in the past with studying and the like. How do you deal with the loneliness, and as well, if you can answer times when you're unfocused or maybe a bit overwhelmed? So the first part of the question is, I've just gotten used to spending large periods of time alone because, I've never really had a job in the traditional sense. I was teaching martial arts, which would be train in the morning and maybe teach a couple of private lessons, and then the rest of the day was my own time, right? So I'd be on my own while everyone else was at work or doing stuff. So, and with my businesses now, I run my businesses and I work from home, so there's large periods of time where I'm on my own, so I've kind of gotten used to it. But truth be told, Ads, I don't necessarily think it's always the healthiest way to exist or to move through the world. And I really do feel that human interaction is a positive thing. I know there come points where I just start going a little bit stir crazy, and I've got to go do some jiu-jitsu or go to the gym or go interact with people, even if it's just going to sit in Starbucks and work from there and just engaging with the baristas and, just having some sort of human contact. I think that's very important. So I would say I don't think spending too much time on your own is a good thing. The second part of your question, asking about focus, that's just a case of training your mind, or it's just a case of creating the habit of being able to focus. Like anything else in life, it's repetition and training that help you acquire a skill. So what I do now for focus is I have a few tricks. The first is that I don't have any distractions in my immediate environment if I want to focus. So my phone goes on do not disturb mode. For example, I'm talking to you now in a window, and that window is completely maximized so that there's nothing else to distract me. My computer's not going to like ding and say, "Oh, you need to check your email," or "This message has come in," or that's all been switched off. So I've eliminated distractions, and then I just train myself I use what's called the Pomodoro method, which is a method of time management, which helps you concentrate. So you work for 25 minutes on and 5 minutes off. And I have a little timer. So it's called Focus Keeper, if I'm not mistaken. It's an Apple iPhone app. And I just train myself to use that. And after a while, it starts to get easier and you start to be able to concentrate more effectively. So it's those two things: eliminating distraction and then having set work times where I'm committed to focus.
Okay, excellent. And somewhat related, I want to speak on and ask you about emotional stability. Do you remember the last time that you lost control of your emotions?
Yeah, it happens more often than I like. I mean, I wouldn't say I lose control and like become hysterical, but my big understanding that I wish someone had taught me when I was young is that emotions are meant to be felt, right? And that's the only healthy way to deal with emotions, is to feel them, right? To literally sit there and feel them. And most of the ills in people's lives, most of the broken relationships and the alcoholism and the drug addiction and the negative things which occur in people's lives is because they don't know how to sit and deal with the discomfort that's created by emotions that they perceive as negative. So now I'm at the point when I start to feel emotional and it's an emotion that I don't enjoy or I find uncomfortable, I just sit with it, right? I literally just sit with it until it's been felt properly. And that really helps. And then also I meditate a lot, which helps me. It helps keep your emotions a lot more stable. But the truth is I'm human like all of us. And often I get angry or upset or sad. And, like I just try to deal with it in a healthy way.
And would you say, I think you might have given me your full answer on that, tips for emotional stability or improving that? And you said meditation is perhaps the biggest tool for that, would you say?
Mm-hmm. I'd say meditation would be second. First would be learning how to feel your emotions and engage with them in a healthy way. My best advice for that would be to read the book, or two books. The first is Letting Go: The Pathway to Surrender by David R. Hawkins. And the other one is called You Can Have It All. And the author's name, for some reason, it escapes me. Oh, it's Arnold Patent is the name of the second one. So both of those go into depth on how to sit and feel your feelings and what to do with them and how not to judge them and how to express them or to feel them in a healthy way as opposed to repressing or suppressing them.
Thanks for those book recommendations, Nick. I'm a lover of books, and I always love getting new book recommendations. And I actually saw you reading that one. I think it's You Can Have It All on your Instagram. And I also saw on your Instagram, and I think this is related too to what you spoke about working long hours alone. You met Tim Ferriss, who is a huge influence on me, especially when I was in college. When did you meet him, and what was the context for that?
I was first made aware of Tim Ferriss's book, The 4 Hour Work Week, when it launched, before it became such a huge hit. And then a few years later, probably about 3 or 4 years later, when I was working on the London Real project, he was a guest on the show. So he came to the studio and we hosted him there.
I've seen that podcast several times. It's one of my favorites.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah. I mean, he's obviously, Tim Ferriss is a genius. There's no other word. Like, that is, I don't throw that word around often. He is a genius. He saw the world in a very different way and has helped share that with many, many people. And yeah, I'm also a huge fan of the guy.
Speaking of London Real, Nic, I don't want to pull any punches, so please only answer what you're comfortable with. But I was just wondering what happened with regards to that. Like, why weren't you on the show after a bit? Because I remember when that happened, I loved the chemistry you guys had, and then you just like kind of disappeared, and I couldn't find you anywhere on the internet. And then I found your Twitter, your old Twitter, and then that disappeared. And then I recently discovered you again. I was like, I gotta find this guy. I know he's on here somewhere. And I was super jacked when I did. But if you could speak on that, I think more than just me, there's going to be a demographic of people that are super interested in kind of what happened there.
Yeah, so in many ways I could frame this. I think the easiest one in the context of this discussion, or the one that will be most valuable to you, is there's an expression that I'm very fond of, which says your vibe attracts your tribe, right? I'm sure you've heard that before. And that's referring. No, okay, it's one of my favorites.
I like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to it, right? Like we all vibrate at a different frequency, right? We all have a different level of consciousness, and we generally tend to attract people who are operating at a similar level of consciousness into our lives. That's why, shitty people generally end up in prison, right? Because they're operating from a very low consciousness, not always, but generally. So they tend to congregate or be forced into places where people of the same low level of vibration are. That's why people, if you go to a Rotary association or a Rotary Club meeting, where people are all very highly evolved and they're trying to help and give back, they're all at a certain level of consciousness and development, and they're operating at a certain frequency, so they tend to congregate into the same kind of places and move in the same social circles. And so what happened with Brian and I is we just I'd done some very intense work with ayahuasca, the medicine ayahuasca, and my frequency changed completely. And we were just at a point where we could not, like, his frequency was here we go, over here, and mine was over here. They were like in different places entirely, right? I'm not saying one was better or worse than the other. I'm just saying they were very different. And so if you understand that your vibe attracts your tribe, you will also understand that your vibe also rejects what is not your tribe, right? Like, you will you will just subconsciously push people away or not at a level that you're at. So I think Brian and I were at very different levels, and so we just naturally pushed each other away. And that's, I guess, the best way to describe it.
It seems like a very very evolved way of looking at it, like that lens. And yeah, thank you for that explanation, Nic. And that segues really nicely into my ayahuasca questions, which I watched that podcast last night, Nic, and wow, that was fantastic, man. It was one of the most emotionally affecting podcasts that I've listened to. And I say this because I've never taken ayahuasca or peyote, but I wanted to ask you, Nic, if you've ever taken psilocybin and or LSD, and what differences you see between all of those hallucinogenics or psychedelics.
Yeah, I have taken certain things. I'm not going to admit to what they are on here, but I've taken several psychedelics. There's overlap between all of them, but they are all very different as well. For me, I think for certain people, they have an affinity with certain types of psychedelic compounds, and they prefer the effects and what they get out of certain ones as opposed to others. And for me, my medicine is ayahuasca. Of all the ones I've tried, that's the one that really has helped me the most and that I feel the strongest connection with. But I still think that psilocybin and LSD and ibogaine and peyote and all those things can be wonderful, wonderful healing tools when they're respected and engaged with with reverence.
Yeah, and we don't have to go deep into it because I will link that podcast in the description. But I had a question about the one guy who had this dark energy about him. He was saying like "I am God" over and over again.
Yeah.
Why do you think he wasn't allowed to release that? It seems like he didn't get that energy out.
Wow, that's a tough question. So just a little bit of background. Ads is referring to the very last trip I did in ayahuasca ceremony I did in Peru on December 22nd, 2012. There was a gentleman in the group that had, some people would describe it as a psychotic break. Some people call it a bad trip. I don't really know what it was, but he just started screaming, "I am God, I am God," and he kind of ruined the ceremony for many people. My perspective now, as I've thought about it over the years, of what that was, is the guy, he was just lost in his ego. His ego was trying to take control of the situation, and he wanted everyone to look at him, and he wanted to be the center of attention. And the thing about ayahuasca is it works with what it has to work with. Like if you're a garbage person, I'm not saying he was a garbage person, but if you've got a lot of issues, it's not automatically going to fix you, right? Like some of those issues might come to a head during the ceremony. And I think that was the issue with this gentleman, is like his ego was just so out of control that it just manifested in that ceremony. That's kind of my perspective on it at the moment. But I mean, that medicine works in strange ways. I don't always understand what it's doing or what its effects are, so I can't categorically say that that's what happened to the guy.
Definitely. Yeah. I think that seems like a good explanation to me, Nick. It does seem like he was like, it seems like psychedelics dissolve the ego, right? And you talked about this happening to you. You had an ego death, as you described it. And it seems like he was fighting that. He was trying to hold on to that ego, like the ego was holding on to itself in a way, in a meta way. So I think that's a good description.
Yeah, I remember that just the other day I was looking at some pictures from that trip to Peru, and there were a few pictures of us all standing around before the very final ceremony. We were getting ready, and someone just whipped out a camera, and they wanted to get a few pics for themselves, and then they posted them on Facebook. And everyone in those pictures is looking kind of like anxious and nervous about what's coming up. Like I remember on my face, I was just like I was carrying this huge weight because I knew it was going to be an extraordinarily powerful trip. And then this dude was just like smiling and pulling faces at the camera and stuff. And part of me thinks that maybe it's because he wasn't approaching it in the right way. He wasn't approaching it with reverence, and he was still trying to like use it as his own platform for his own attention seeking or whatever it might be. I think that definitely played a role in the whole thing.
What failure in your life has affected you the most, Nick?
There was a business relationship I had for several years. I think it lasted almost 8 years in total, and ultimately it didn't work. And my business partner and I, or my ex-business partner and I, we were pretty good friends, and we kind of grew apart in a large way. And now we're civil towards each other, but it definitely. I guess I would probably go as far as to say it destroyed our friendship, and that wasn't easy. It's still something I live with every day, and I'm slowly starting to let it go and get to a point where I can move on and understand that it all happened for a reason, and that to forgive myself for my role in that, and to forgive him for his role in it, and just move forwards from a place of acceptance. So that's probably it, Ads.
Mm-hmm. And what did you learn from that? What would you say maybe is the one big lesson?
There were so many lessons involved in that I'm still learning to this day. Just lessons about communication was a big one. Learning that spoken or video communication is far superior to email or text communication, because there's so many nuances and subtleties that you can't really pick up on, right? That was one of them. And also just, the guy taught me a lot about work ethic, and he taught me many things about, just about how to be a good human being and how to integrate into society. And there were many, many positive things that I learned from the guy. But I also realized that when you go into business with someone, it's really important that you guys are on the same vibe, right? And that you are at similar. I think it's kind of important to be in similar stages in your life. So, for example, with he and I, he was a family man with 3 kids and a mortgage and a home, and I was a single guy with no responsibilities really. And then I was traveling the world on my own, and our lifestyles were so different, right? And we had such different pressures on us. I didn't have anywhere near as much pressure as he had on him. So there was this natural discrepancy between the two of us, between where we were and who we were and what we were trying to achieve. And we could never really reconcile that. And I think that was the biggest issue, the biggest challenge, or the thing that led to the ultimate deterioration and dissolution of that partnership.
Okay. And what advice would you give to your 18-year-old self, Nic? What is, if you could have maybe 30 seconds or 60 seconds with 18-year-old Nic?
I've been asked this question many times, and my answer always changes. I think today it would be, don't be afraid. It's all going to be okay. That would be it. Don't be afraid. Everything's going to be okay.
What is some bad advice you often hear in the BJJ world?
Oh, there's so much bullshit in the BJJ world. I mean, I don't even know where to start. I wouldn't say it's an actual piece of advice that I hear often, but there are these myths and misconceptions that abound in that world. One of them is that jiu-jitsu makes you more flexible, which is just bullshit. It doesn't make you more flexible, it makes you inflexible. And you need to constantly be stretching and doing flexibility training to counteract that. Mm-hmm. And then there's this, I think with jiu-jitsu, one of the things that really, towards the end of my time as a full-time jiu-jitsu instructor, was one of the things that was grating on me the most is a lot of hero worship. And I want to put my hand up and say straight up, I was subject of that as well. I had a pretty good name in the industry, and I got that from some people, and I just realized I wasn't deserving of it. And I also saw that a lot of the people who are worshipped in that culture are just worshipped because of one single thing, which is that they can wrestle and fight really well, right? And I had to come to the understanding that doesn't make a good person. It didn't make me a good person. There was a point probably when I was the best jiu-jitsu player, that when I was 28 or 27, and I was in the prime, and I was the most lethal that I'd ever been. It was probably when I was the shittiest human being that I've ever been. I was very arrogant, and I was treating women badly, and I was very selfish, and so that kind of continues everywhere in the world of jiu-jitsu, because you come into it and you're this young guy, and you see a black belt, and you're like, wow, that guy, he's got a black belt, he must be an incredible human being, he must have his shit together. And those two things definitely don't go together. Sometimes they do, but it's not a given. There's a lot of jiu-jitsu guys out there that are total douchebags, and that cheat on their wives and lie and just are arrogant, and I think that's the biggest, it's not a piece of advice, but that's the biggest misconception that perpetuates in the industry. Okay.
And what about the bad advice you often hear outside of the BJJ world that you just know is not wrong, or excuse me, that is not right in your eyes?
A lot of people say be yourself, right? And there is definitely something to that. I think being authentic is important, but The idea of being yourself isn't always the advice of being yourself isn't always the best advice, because if you want to achieve a certain thing in your life, the person that you are is not going to achieve it. You have to become the person worthy or capable of achieving that thing you want, right? So if someone, let's say, wants to excel in martial arts, for example, and they're lazy, right? And I tell them, go be yourself, just be yourself, right? And he only trains once a week. That's crappy advice, right? It's no, be the best version of yourself, or be a better version of yourself, or be the person who's worthy of the things that you're trying to achieve, is probably a better piece of advice in my mind.
I like that. And I watched, you actually tagged me in it, Nick, a video you posted on, I think it was Facebook and Instagram, where you spoke about the importance of sleep, and how in your eyes, sleep is actually, it supersedes diet in terms of importance. And I think you call it the foundation of health. And could you just go into that and speak on your knowledge on sleep?
Yeah, so I really do believe that sleep is the foundation of good health, and that if your sleep is very, very good, you can get away with having average nutrition or not exercising. However, I don't think it works the other way around. I don't think if you have excellent nutrition and you work out really well, that you can get away with poor sleep, right? That will catch up to you, because sleep is where our body rejuvenates and repairs, right? And our mind also refreshes itself. And it's like anything, like if you don't change the oil in your car, right, like your car is going to break down, right? It's not a great analogy, but you get what I'm saying. Like there has to be this, if you're working all the time, there must be rest, right? If you're creating, there must be periods where if you're advancing, there must be periods where you retreat, right? And sleep is one of those, is the period in your life where you retreat, right? You go within, and your mind has a chance to process everything that it's experienced during the day in the form of dreams, and your subconscious is working things out, but also your brain is detoxifying itself from all the chemicals that built up during the course of the day that cause fatigue. It's cleaning itself with the substance called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is basically the secretion that your brain exudes while you're sleeping, that literally washes your brain. It washes it of all the toxins, right? So, and then your muscles get a chance to relax, and basically your whole system goes into a repair mode, right? So obviously, it's obvious from a physical perspective that is absolutely vital. It's essential to repair the damage that's been done just by being alive. Just by being alive, there's stresses on you. There's free radicals that are building up in your system. There's stress that's building up in your mind. The gravity on your body is stressing you. I mean, so you have to be resting to counteract that. But also from a spiritual perspective, I've heard that, and I believe this, that we all come from the universal consciousness, right? We come from the one, and the one splits into many, and we experience life as an individual. But ultimately, we are part of the universal consciousness. And when we die, we return back to that universal consciousness. And what I've heard is that sleep is where it's almost like where you jack back into the universal consciousness, and it gives you, it rejuvenates you and recharges you on a spiritual level as well. That's why people who don't sleep go insane eventually, right? Because they're not reconnecting, right? They're not talking to the mothership and like getting that connection anymore. Or they're cut off. So to me, like, I know as well, sleep is a very mystical thing in which you can be given answers and insights that you cannot get in your waking consciousness. And I mean, my current business, Liberation Mentor, that the idea for that business literally came to me in a dream. I remember waking up, it was 2 years ago. I came running out of the bedroom, and I said to my wife, I know what I have to do next. I just saw it in my dream and made it very clear. So I think that's the state of, or the act of sleeping is often demonized in our culture, because there's this weird current of, this grind mentality. You got to grind and push and go and work, and I'll sleep when I'm dead, and sleep's for losers. And like, I think that's just stupid, and it's pathological, and it's rooted in fear. I think that sleep is one of the most important things you can do to succeed, because you are recharging yourself and you're making yourself more creative and more effective. And yeah, I'm a big proponent of good sleeping habits and respecting sleep.
Do you have any tips for people that have, because just speaking for myself, and I don't know, I would like to know your opinion on this too. Do you think it's something that men struggle with more than women? And also just some tips for people who do struggle with falling asleep.
I have absolutely no idea or no data or no point of reference for whether it's something men struggle with more than women. I think there's many different components to sleep. I think there's spiritual, mental, and physical things that you can do. Spiritually, you can have a clear conscience, right, and not fuck people over. Some of the people that I've worked with, that were very successful people, had very poor sleeping habit or struggled to sleep, and it was because they were not great people. They were fucking people over, right? They had a lot on their minds because they knew on some deep level that they were cheating people or lying. So that's the first thing, is just to have a clear conscience, right? Like you've heard that before, like I'm losing sleep over something, right? Or I can't sleep at night. If you do that, you're not going to be able to sleep at night. There's a reason people say that. It's because it's true, right? So step one is get right with yourself and the people in your life, and be honest and just be a good person and have a good conscience. And from a mental perspective, quietening the mind down before you sleep makes a huge difference. So doing 20 minutes of meditation before you sleep I find it greatly improves the quality of my sleep, because my mind is not as busy and I don't have as many restless dreams when I do that. And then from the physical perspective, there's several things. Stretching for 20 minutes before bed is also very, very effective. But the two most important things that I found are mouth taping, which is just a very powerful little habit that forces you to breathe through your nose as opposed to through your mouth. When you breathe through your mouth, it creates an unhealthy breathing pattern that can cause serious health problems, and also usually prevents you from getting into the deeper levels of sleep. And then spraying topical magnesium oil onto your body and just rubbing it into your skin also has a very positive effect that I found is very helpful for me.
I've heard about the magnesium via Tim, actually, but I never heard about it the topical way. And you actually said that it affects you in a better way. Maybe the bioavailability is higher with that topical ointment as opposed to taking, a vitamin.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know if oral versus transdermal, or if oral is better than transdermal, but it's been my experience that transdermal oral magnesium, like if I take magnesium threonate or magnesium citrate or any sort of pills with magnesium in them, it generally, I don't know why, everyone's got different chemical makeups, and I haven't actually met anyone who's experienced the same thing, but I'm sure there are others out there. It actually makes me quite edgy the next day if I've ingested magnesium, but I don't get that with the transdermal. With the transdermal, I just get the relaxation without any of that edginess. So that's what I prefer. And also I take a lot of supplements, so I try to keep the amount of supplements. If there's a way I can like swallow less supplements, I'm the first one to take it, right?
Definitely. And you spoke about taping your mouth. What type of tape do you use?
It's called 3M Micropore Medical Tape. You can get it on Amazon for a couple of bucks. I think $1 a roll or something like that. It's dirt cheap. If you want to find out more about that, I actually have a podcast with Patrick McKeown, who is the author of The Oxygen Advantage, which is a book all about how to breathe correctly, specifically how to breathe through your nose. And that was actually where I got that idea from. He's a very smart man, and I think if hopefully you can link to that episode in the show. He drops some real knowledge in there.
Yeah, I will link that in the description, of course. And have you ever tapped out Hodge?
A couple of times, yeah, a couple of times. This was many, many years ago. To this day, I don't know if he was going flat out. I would guess no. I did go there 2 years ago, or no, not 2 years ago. Last summer, I was there in London, and I trained with him, and he thrashed me like I was a white belt, pretty badly. Yeah, he absolutely just whipped me. So, yeah. I guess the answer is yes and no.
Yeah, that's quite impressive, Nick. And he's just the match that was like wow to me was actually one he lost, and that was the one versus Jacare, where he broke Jacare's arm, and then Jacare won on points just by like evading him the rest of the match. What do you think about that? Do you think, because it didn't seem like Hodge, you know, he seemed like he had like an ethical barrier about going after a dude with a broken arm, you know?
I mean, I think Roger won that fight. The ref just didn't know how to call it. He should have ended the fight because the other fighter was in danger. Like he was. I mean, the ethical thing, I don't think it was ethical. It was just Jacare ran away for the rest of the match. Roger wanted to engage, but Roger's not the fastest guy in town, and you know he's like a big, tall dude, and he was probably exhausted at that point. And like you could see, he was trying to go after the guy to finish the fight, but the guy was just running away. So I don't think there's any ethical thing with Roger. Roger would have smashed the dude if he could have got his hands on him, but he couldn't. yeah, exactly, or his leg maybe.
Yeah, and I was looking at your Instagram, as I said before, Nick, and I was actually quite happy to find out that as far as I can tell, your favorite superhero movie is Watchmen, and I don't think I've met anyone else that has that as their favorite superhero movie, let alone have even seen it. Like most people my age have never even heard of it. And why is that one of your favorite movies, and why Dr. Manhattan is your favorite superhero? Because there's a lot of great characters in that movie.
Sure. So I'll just say Watchmen's been superseded by Avengers Endgame. That's definitely my favorite now, even though I did love Watchmen. But Dr. Manhattan, the thing I just love about him is he's limitless. He has this infinite potential. Anything he can conceive in his mind, he can create, right? Like that's, I mean, if you think about it, Dr. Manhattan, in that movie, they say there is a God and he is American, right? Like, I think, no, sorry, I apologize. It was, we found the Superman and he is American. And if you think about the powers that Dr. Manhattan has, I mean, he's infinitely superior to pretty much any other superhero. Is to the point where he's borderline boring. Like he's just invincible, and there's nothing he can't do. Right? It's probably why he's not that popular. But for me, it really is the idea that, you know, I really believe in the power of your mind to create your reality. That's something I've believed in for many years, and I've seen it work in my own life and the lives of others. And Dr. Manhattan has always embodied that for me, the power of the mind and the power of focus, partly because of that thing he has on his forehead, the circumpunct.
And you did that during your ayahuasca trip.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because there was something about that I found was really cool. But yeah, he's very cool. Watchmen's a very underrated movie. I'm glad you enjoy it.
Oh yeah, definitely. And you were brought up, as far as I can tell, quite fundamentally Christian, which is something we share. And other than psychedelics, what are some things that I guess caused you to change that belief system?
I was just presented with some information that just, it's difficult to explain, Ads, but it was I just stopped believing it. I just stopped believing in it, in that particular, in the way in which it had been presented, which was a very rigid structure that left no room for interpretation. And I came across this information that just made me see it in a different way. You know, there's that expression, a mind once expanded beyond its original dimensions can never return to how it was before. I butchered that a little bit, but you get what I'm saying. Like, and once my mind was expanded, I could never put it back in a box, right? I was like, I can see beyond the edges of the box now. And that for me, with organized religion, not just Christianity, all organized religion, like, I think there are truths within it, but I don't want to take the truths and I don't want to have to eat the truths and with the side of the falsehoods, if that makes sense. Like, I just want the truth. So I just operate outside those systems, and I see what's truthful within them, or what feels like truth to me, and I absorb it and I take it and I use it. And then what isn't useful to me, I don't. You know, Bruce Lee's famous quote, absorb what is useful, reject what is useless, right? Like that to me is a more intelligent way to live than to just say, okay, I'm an X and I believe Y, and that's it. And that's the end of it. My learning and my growth is stopped, and that's it. Or my dad was a Jehovah's Witness, so I'm a Jehovah's Witness, and that's it. That's what I believe. and you try and shove everything else into that little box that you've created for yourself, or that mental cage you've created for yourself. To me, that doesn't make sense. It's not an intelligent way to move through the world.
What you just said there, Nick, it reminds me of something Naval Ravikant said. He basically said none of us should ever have a fixed identity. And basically, you know, because it's always changing. But if you were a billionaire tomorrow, Nick, what about your life would change, if at all?
What an exceptionally good question. What about my life would change? I would spend more time with my friends. I would just bring all my friends to be with me, because they bring me my greatest joy in life is my friends and the people I love, and I don't get to spend as much time with them as I want to. So I'd probably build a big compound somewhere with rooms for everyone, and just say, you guys can live here for as long as you want. Everything's taken care of, and then just hang out with my friends 24/7. That's probably what would change.
What is because I believe you're in the U.S. right now. You moved your workstation to the U.S. and you're from South Africa. For those that aren't experts in detecting accents, what would be your favorite country? Because you are well traveled, Nick. Besides your home country and besides the U.S., what would you say is your favorite country that you've been to?
Very easy question for me to answer. I'm sure anyone who's heard me speak in a podcast before would know that it's Japan. Huge fan of Japan, huge fan of the culture. A close second to Japan is Thailand. Absolutely love Thailand, and those two places could not be more different, but they're both incredible, and I just love both of them very, very much on a deep level.
Mm-hmm. Very intelligent, disciplined culture, Japan. What is something you're in this moment admittedly terrible at, but you do have interest in getting better at in the future?
I'm terrible at waking up early in the morning. I'm really not good at it. I'm working to get better at that, man. Like I'm doing it, but I really don't enjoy it.
You're more of a night owl?
Yeah, generally. I mean, that again is just an identity construct that can be changed, right? If I just start telling myself I'm better at going to sleep early, I'll probably get there. But I do find I do enjoy being awake, you know, in the later hours. And I mean, I don't go to bed much later than 11 or 12, but you know, I'd like to go to bed at like 10, you know. And what I'm not good at, I can be quite single-minded and rigid in my thought patterns, and that is even with a lifetime of training myself to not be like that.
Wow.
So you can imagine. Yeah, I used to be like way worse, but it's not something that came naturally to me. It's something I really had to work on, you know, Ads, and I still think there's a lot of room for improvement.
That's quite interesting, because what I was about to say next actually might not be true. You seem to me like someone who not only is very driven, but has a very high degree of openness. Because one thing I've noticed is that people who are quite ambitious and, you know, more type A, they tend to be quite neurotic and not very open to new things at all, or you know, even just a little bit. But what would you say about that in regards to?
I'd say that's very accurate. For a large portion of my life, I used to be very neurotic, very, very neurotic, and there are remnants of that. That's probably one of the reasons I could do so well in jiu-jitsu and you know, excel, is because I was so single-minded and focused, and everything had to be a certain way, and it was, you know what I mean? It was like, and my wife drives her crazy. Like I'm, you know, my office, you can't really see it now, but everything is in this little perfect place, and like it's borderline OCD, right? And that is definitely a weakness of mine, is that like sometimes just to relax a little bit and just be a little bit more flexible in my thought patterns and my behaviors. But I'm working on it, and I'm getting better at it for sure.
What is the best purchase you've made in the last 6 months?
What a fantastic question. Where do you get these questions from, Ads?
I've stolen a couple from Mr. Ferris. I'll admit that. But yeah, a couple of them I thought of myself, so I'll put my feather in the cap on that. But
So a couple come to mind. This boom. I've got this mic and it's on a boom that you can't really see, but it's like an adjustable boom that I can move away and give me space back on my desk. I really love that. It just really makes me feel professional when I'm doing my podcasts. And you should think about getting one. I think it would help you a lot, right? It'll lend an air of.
I had a mic, and then it went out of. It's currently on IR right now, so I'm gonna have to either get a replacement or pay for fixing it. And I do have another one, but it's in Europe right now, so I'm probably just gonna pay to have that shipped back. It's at my mother's house. So
yeah, there's that, and then I just got a car on Saturday. I didn't have a car for 20 years because I just didn't need one. Living in London, you don't need one. The public transport's really good. And then when I left London and I was traveling around the world, obviously having a car doesn't benefit you in any way. So
right.
This was my first car that I've owned in 19 years. And I wanted a nice car. I was waiting for the right one. And it took me 2 years to finally decide on the one I wanted, and I got like a really nice car. So that, to me, is definitely the best purchase I've made in the last 6 months.
What was the make and model?
It's a Honda Accord V6, which is they don't make them anymore. It's a 2016. It's like Accord is generally a pretty boring family man sedan wagon, but this one's kind of cool. It's like a 2-door. And it's got a really nice engine, and it's just really nice. As I said, I love Japan. I love Japanese efficiency, so I wanted a Japanese car with a little bit of sportiness to it, and I think this fits the bill, right?
Excellent. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that day when I can get a car. Not that I need one anytime soon. What is something that surprised you the most in the last few weeks or the last month?
I guess, man, what a good question. I wish I'd known about these before. I would have given you better answers. Arizona was put on lockdown again for another 30 days, which I found quite surprising. I get why they did it, but still it came as a bit of a shock because I was just getting used to being able to go to the gym again and work out. And then, yeah, that was a bit of a blow. So I guess that, yeah.
What is your take on this whole pandemic situation, Nick? If we can segue into that.
Sure, I'm actually gonna take the fifth or plead the fifth on that, and I've realized that the only intelligent response that anyone can have about coronavirus is I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I don't know where it came from. I don't know how serious it is. I just don't know. So I'm just following the rules. If the powers that be say wear a mask, I'm going to follow the rules and just watch.
I understand. It is my duty to myself as an interviewer to ask. But what is one book that you've given most as a gift to other people?
It's actually, funny enough, the one I mentioned earlier, which is Letting Go, The Pathway to Surrender. I've given that book to several people, and I'll continue to do so because, as I said, it offers a way to deal with your feelings in a very intelligent manner that helps you live a happier, more joyful life, right? Which is what we all want. So, I mean, it's a fantastic gift to give to someone. Really, really good gift.
What are 3 books, and I'm guessing that might be on the list, 3 books that have influenced you the most, would you say, or greatly influenced you, just off the top of your head?
Yeah, it's easy. Unscripted by MJ DeMarco, which is absolutely incredible book about showing how generally we are all programmed to live our lives according to a script, and that society creates a script and expects us to follow it, and that script almost always does not lead to success, joy, or fulfillment. The next one would be Courage, The Joy of Living Dangerously by Osho, who's one of my favorite spiritual teachers, very amazing man, an enlightened human being, albeit flawed like the rest of us. And that's just all about how living courageously leads to the most joy and how to face your fears and move through them. And then finally would be Letting Go, The Pathway to Surrender. In fact, I recommended those 3 just the other day to someone.
Excellent. And what would you say was maybe 1 or 2 of your most significantly firmly held beliefs that you later realized were completely wrong?
One of them was that I wasn't going to get old. That was a tough one, right? You know, when you're in your 20s, you're like, no, it's never going to happen to me. And then, you know, in late 30s, you start to realize, you know, it's coming, and your body is just not the same as it used to be. So that was definitely one. I also believed that there was such a thing as a perfect relationship, which now I've realized doesn't really exist, and that there are great relationships, but all of them have their challenges, and that what we're led to believe about relationships through Disney movies doesn't always reflect reality in an accurate way. And then another one would be ads. To be honest, I can't really think of another one off the top of my head.
Okay.
If something comes to me, I'll let you know.
Definitely. And do you have any documentaries and or movies, maybe one or two of each, that are just all-time greats in your opinion?
Yeah. One of my very favorites is a movie called Baraka, which is Baraka. There's no dialogue in the movie. It's just a bunch of shots of different venues and locations throughout the world. Like there's a shot of these temples in Cambodia as the sun's setting, and then there's shots of factories in certain parts of the world where they're processing chickens, and then there's shots of jungles, and it's a documentary almost of the diversity and the broad range of experiences happening on the planet at once, which there's something really soothing and really expanding about it. I love watching that. Another one, I guess, would be, I just watched one the other day, which was mind-blowing. I'm just trying to recall what it was. It's obviously not coming to mind now. I guess I'll just throw in one for the Jiu-Jitsu guys. If you haven't seen Choke, the documentary about Rickson Gracie, that's a magical one. But those are all that come to mind right now, Ads.
Who do you think is top 3 all-time and top 3 right now?
With regards to what specifically?
Sorry, BJJ.
Top 3 would be Roger Gracie, Marcelo Garcia, number 2, and then number 3 probably Caio Terra. And I would say, I don't really follow the scene right now, so it's difficult for me to answer. But I'm sure those 3 guys would hold their own against anyone, even now. Yeah.
And we're nearing up on the end of our hour here, Nick. I want to be respectful of your time. Do you have any final asks of the audience, or just final thoughts you want to share with people?
Yeah. The final thought that I would share would be that, just like the title of that book by Arnold Payton, you can have it all, right? You can have an amazing life, especially now in the world we live in now, in the age we live in now. There's so much opportunity. You can do pretty much anything you want to do, be anyone you want to be, and achieve pretty much anything you want to achieve if you're willing to have the discipline and to make the sacrifices and to commit. So I just want to leave people with that understanding. You know, I did it with Jiu-Jitsu. You know, I wasn't the most as a kid, I wasn't the most athletic kid ever, and I always dreamed of being a martial arts master, and I went out and did it, you know. Not because I'm special, just because I had the courage to do that. And I had a vision and a dream, and I stayed focused, and I made it happen. And what I would ask them to do is, if you've enjoyed this conversation and enjoyed hearing from me, please listen to my podcast, which is called the Liberation Mentor Podcast. You can find it wherever podcasts are, including Apple and Spotify and the Google Play Store, etc.
I will be sure to link all of Nick's links in the description box below, including his podcast links, his links to his Amazon author page as well, and his personal website, where you can actually get a free digital copy of his newest book, which is coming out in Q3, as I understand.
Mm-hmm.
And I will link that as well. And I just wanted to thank you again and extend my gratitude, Nick, for sharing this time with me. There's nothing more valuable than time, and I just wanted to make sure you know I do feel grateful for that, and I hope we can do it at some point again in the future.
Sure, I'd say you've got a very nice interview manner and a very good, just a nice presence and a good energy. It was a great pleasure for me. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much, Nick. Until next time.